Hi, welcome to Help the Helpers, our summer writing project. I'm so delighted. It really helps me to be on vacation and to be introspective and to kind of witness for myself the miracle of how the unexpected emerges from us when we give it a chance. And I'm particularly happy to have Sondra Perl with us this morning because uh, I learned the rudiments not only of writing, but of expressing how focusing works with her book. When was that first book, Sondra?
About 2005?
Yes, about 2005, and it had a little recording that went with it, and I use that all the time. And that can be available to anybody that wants to read that. I highly recommend it. So Sandra has been generous enough to come almost every year and give us some help with our writing. So thank you, and I'll hand it over to you, Sandra.
Thanks, Lynn. So again, we were looking back over the last couple of years. This is the fourth time that I'm joining all of you in August at 8 a.m. in New York time. And it's a delight to be here and also really, I guess, admirable and commendable that so many of you not only have focusing as a part of your lives professionally, personally, and the way it sort of just becomes a way of being, but also that you make this time for writing. It's just lovely and it's always a joy. And I'm always reminded of kind of the vulnerability and the sensitivity that people who do focusing bring to their lives and to who they are. So again, thank you for being here. I know already a handful of people may need to leave, bump out little early, but hope most of you will be here throughout. And we have a morning planned of writing and sharing. Um, I know in the email that was sent out, there's a list of the various other workshops we've done. They're all different and also follow a similar format. And also, since Lynn mentioned the book, she's talking about a book titled Felt Sense: Writing with the Body. And it's no longer in print for what many, publishing world has changed, but my graduate students at the CUNY Graduate Center put it online. So everything, all three chapters and the guided process, which is a lot like focusing questions, are available if you go to that link. So just so you know, it is totally accessible, but you need to find that link. It's not easy to find. So it's in that email. And I'm sure, we could send it out again if you don't have the email. And really, what I say in that book is what I say many times, which is I came to this work from writing. And when I ended up meeting Jean Genlin in the very early 70s and becoming part of a changes network in New York City, um, it was clear to me that the standard way of teaching writing was kind of backwards or based on a philosophy that didn't fit with most people's felt experience. Um, and the standard way of teaching writing was sort of, and certainly, especially if, and it was mostly English teachers, if they were adept at reading and analyzing texts, that's a very different skill from creating texts and composing from from what you know or don't know. Um, and so the idea was you already knew what you wanted to say. You could make an outline. You could, sort of structure what you want to say. And the notion was that writing was really a very rational and cognitive process. And the body was kind of ignored. And when I began to teach focusing or do focusing instructions with people and watched how meaning was created, I understood that writing was very much the same kind of process, but rather than say speaking out what you were feeling, sensing into bodily knowledge, you were putting some of that on paper. So that's when I worked with Jean and created what I called the guidelines for composing, which, if you get to look at them, are very similar. They follow that really brilliant order that was put together for focusing. Um, So that's sort of how I began to see the connection between focusing and writing, and began to recognize that felt sense is really a very important part of who we are when we write. Because to write in that way is to be comfortable with not knowing, to be patient, to allow words to come, um, and then to check, are these words the words I want? Or maybe they're not. And again, that's a checking that is internal. It's not, are they spelled correctly? It's, do these words convey the meaning I'm working towards? And they may or they may not, but they allow us to go back and to go forward, so that writing is also what I used to talk about was writing as a recursive process, that one goes back to go forward. And that going back moment is also really interesting, because what do you go back to? And sometimes it's the words on the page. You may notice when you're writing that you need to sort of pause and reread a little bit to then move forward. Sometimes it's to a topic. We just go back to check, is this topic, whatever that I was given or prompt, working? But really, I think what we go back to is a felt sense. Um, and that is sometimes for students, whether they're in high school or college, university, graduate school, that's a murky kind of, if they don't know focusing, then felt sense is this experience one has to make room for without necessarily knowing what it is. When I'm working with all of you, that's like I can say that and I have a sense that you kind of know what I'm talking about. But I think often when we write and we're pause for a moment, we go back to that felt sense. And that allows us to check and go forward. And in some ways, it just happens. I think it's kind of very natural once you get used to thinking like this, but that's sort of how I connect the work that Jean has done for all these years, that you have done, that the Institute has carried on, that Help for Helpers does, is using our knowledge of the body to help us create pieces of writing that feel authentic, that feel as if they are in the voice that we recognize as ours. So that's sort of how these two come together in my life. And then also, I think for this morning, it's always nice to start with either a poem or a short essay. And we're going to do that today. Dorothy's going to read a very short piece by a writer named Ross Gay. It's called Tomato on Board, and it comes from his book called The Book of Delights. And they're short essays about, I think maybe, I don't know if it was a year of noticing things that delight him, but it's about things that delight. I'm going to tell you now that the prompt will have nothing to do with tomatoes and nothing to do with boarding an airplane. But that's where we're going to start. And then when Dorothy finishes reading, I will give you the prompt that grows out, in my understanding, from this piece. We'll have about 20 minutes to write silently. And you can keep your screen on if you feel the need to, you want to be in community, although we won't be speaking. And then we will go into small groups, breakout rooms with, I think, 3 people. So there's ample time to share. Oh, before that, we'll talk a little bit about what was it like for you to do this writing, kind of reflect on the process. Then we'll share in small groups. And then towards the last segment, anyone who would, or if we have time, anyone who would like to share what they wrote with the larger group, and usually we have 3 or 4 or 5 people who are kind of happy to do that, we will do that. So that brings us to 8:26, and I think it's time for Dorothy we're going to put if you have your chat open, I'm going to take a look. The Tomato on Board, if you click on that, you will be able to read along as Dorothy's reading. And if not, it's a delightful piece. You can just sit back and listen. Does anybody have a question or a comment before we move on? Or are you kind of clear for what we're doing? And if that's so, Dorothy, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Tomato on board. What you don't know until you carry a tomato seedling through the airport and onto a plane, is that carrying a tomato seedling through the airport and onto a plane will make people smile at you, almost like you're carrying a baby, a quiet baby, I did not know this until today, carrying my little tomato, about 3 or 4 inches high, in its 4-inch plastic starter pot, which my friend Michael gave to me, smirking about how I was going to get it home. Something about this at first felt naughty, and not comparing a tomato to a baby, but carrying the tomato onto the plane. And so I slid the thing into my bag while going through security, which made them pull the bag for inspection. When the security guy saw it was a tomato, he smiled and said, "I don't know how to check that. Have a good day." But I quickly realized that one of its stems, which I almost wrote as arms, was broken from the jostling, and it only had 4 of them. So I decided I better just carry it out in the open. And the shower of love began. It was a shower of love. I also felt while carrying a bouquet of lilies through the streets of Rome last summer. People, maybe women especially, maybe women my age-ish and older especially, smiling with approval. A woman in a house dress beating out a rug on a balcony shouted, "Bravo!" An older couple holding hands both smiled at me and pulled into each other, knitting their fingers together. My showers might have been disappointed to know I was not giving the lilies to a sweetheart, but to my friends Demanio and Mora, who had translated a few of my poems into Italian and were so kind as to let me stay at their place a few nights while I was passing through. On the way to the vegetarian restaurant Demanio's ex-wife owns with her partner, we walked by what I'm pretty sure Demanio said was the biggest redbud tree in the world. It stretched for yards, lounging periodically onto the mossy earth. Its beautiful black bark glistened by the streetlights. Though translation is an act of love, to my showers needn't be disappointed at all. Before boarding the final leg of my flight, one of the workers said, "Nice tomato," which I don't think was a come on. And the flight attendant asked about the tomato at least 5 times. Not an exaggeration. Every time calling it my tomato. "Where's my tomato? How's my tomato? You didn't lose my tomato, did you?" You even directed me to an open seat in the exit row. "Why don't you guys go sit there and stretch out?" I gathered my things and set the little guy in the window seat so she could look out. When I got my water, I poured some onto the little guy's soil. When we got bumpy, I put my hand on the little guy's container, careful not to snap another arm off. And when we landed and the pilot put the brakes on hard, my arm reflexively went across the seat, holding the little guy in place, the way my dad's arm would when he had to brake hard in that car without seatbelts to speak of, in one of my very favorite gestures in the Encyclopedia of Human Gestures.
Thank you, Dorothy. So, given his delight and, about carrying this little tomato and all the love that was showered on him, that's less what we're writing about than the prompt is, what you don't know until you, and then you sit for a minute with what pops into my mind, what I don't know, and what I didn't know, what I didn't know, or what I don't know until I went somewhere, felt something, spoke to someone, had an experience that, surprised me. So that's the prompt. You have 20 minutes, and we should gather back here at about, I guess, 8:53. And so again, feel free to turn off your screen if you prefer, and see you in 20 minutes. Okay, I think we're at about time. So if you haven't stopped writing, see if you can finish the last line or the last words wherever you are and come back to the group. Okay, so this is a chance now for you to turn off or to unmute. And if anyone would like to just have a few words of either what did you write about, or what was it like for you to do this writing? Was it comfortable? Did you find a topic that, you know, sort of emerged from a sense of where you are today or a story, or was it complicated and did you get stuck? Or, what was just so this is, you can certainly mention what you wrote about, but this is not to read the piece, it's to talk a little bit about what happened from the time you heard Dorothy read Tomato on Board till now, and just a little description. So if you'd like to, you can raise your hand or you can unmute and jump in. Sure, I see the first hand I see is Karen. Welcome, Karen. Hi.
Thank you for the session. I found it really interesting. I think what struck me immediately was the phrase you gave us, what you don't know until you dot, dot, dot. Um, I kind of went somewhere immediately with it, and I didn't want to go there. So I had this kind of several minute wrestling, internal wrestling. Um, can't I go somewhere else? I kept thinking about the tomato plant and how that felt. And why can't I go somewhere like the tomato plant? And I couldn't. So I thought, well, obviously, this is where I need to go. So I went straight into it and I wrote something, and it was, I'm not sure I've learned anything from what I wrote, that it's kind of something I've already been processing, but I found your phrase was very resonant with that process. So it was really enjoyable in that sense. And thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And also it takes courage to go where some part of us doesn't want to go. But I mean, we know there's a value to that. And so allowing yourself to go there, despite your mind or saying, I don't want to go there, we know is valuable. So thank you. Thank you for.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, I'm Isabel.
Isabel.
I thought I would be stuck. Nothing would come. But I was surprised. Something came and I wrote and I didn't stop. And it was so enjoyable. It was a great exercise. Thank you.
Lovely. I'm delighted to hear that. Okay, I see Judd.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised because I'm mainly a poet and I don't write prose, and it just the story came out and I was quite surprised about it. Just so that was my experience, sort of being surprised by what came out.
Lovely. Well, again, I think that is one of the more amazing sort of surprises about writing, which is if you let yourself just sink in, writing does lead to discovery. It does lead to what we also doesn't, what you don't know until you start writing is that writing can be surprising. We're not rehashing, we're going someplace new. So thank you. Anyone not have an easy time or struggle a bit or?
I struggled a bit at the beginning. It seemed so open, and then a domestic family event came to mind, and of a new helper that's an aide for my partner who's sick, arriving on the bus that was broken down, and we didn't have any way of getting in touch with her and who she is. And there was something wonderful about just trying to write this event. And as I was writing it, it took on much greater meaning, and it again affirmed how the more in focusing comes through any way that we highlight something, it becomes symbolic, magical. It becomes so much more than it is when you're telling it to a friend of this is what happened, and it was terrible that the bus broke down, things like that.
Yeah, no, writing does do something, takes it someplace else, and we have it. So I'm glad you've persevered and it became something you didn't expect either.
I'll share for a minute.
Great, Ruth.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, Lynn. Because I had some judgment of what I did, but what I did was incredibly useful for me. So um, I did a stream of consciousness, remembering back to what how was it phrased? What you don't know until you have an accident when you're abroad. Because the last 9 weeks to me has been one of, I mean, it doesn't matter, but I just wrote because there's so much that I've learned and that has happened and that I haven't fully taken in the way that I thought that I did in my previous pre-injury life. It was very, very helpful, and there's so much more that wants to come. I was writing twice a day before this, but I broke 2 bones in the wrist of my dominant hand, so I have not been writing, basically. Although now I can write with I mean, I still shake, but with a felt tip pen. So this is more writing than I've done in 9 weeks, and it was very, very, very helpful to put um, some of what's inside onto paper and just see it. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm thinking, it might be nice to just hear, we could also do that later, but what your first line is, as Ruth just said, what you don't know until you, I guess, have an accident abroad. Anybody want to share, not the piece, but the first line? Like what topic did you choose?
I can share my second line.
Sure.
You don't know how helpful and kind and supportive people will be.
Mm.
That, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share a first line?
I can share. Um, how does it go? What you don't know until you stop what you're doing in your head.
Mm.
Right.
Wow.
Wow.
Great. Thank you. And Sarah.
What you don't know until you move is that the transformation inward is just as pronounced as the outer.
As
Mm.
what was the last word? As the
Outer.
outer.
The inner and the outer.
Mhm. Lovely. Thank you.
You can read mine, Susan.
Yep, go ahead.
What I didn't know until I reread my journal yesterday, or I had forgotten how deep it was and how real what I felt about my friend and myself.
Wow. Beautiful. Sure. Liz.
What you don't know until you get into the shower, where finally everything comes perfectly clear.
I'll share a mistake. I made a mistake. I mispronounced the word showered. I said showered. I thought Ross Gay was making up a word. I read this piece last night, but the light was better.
Right. What you didn't know. Thanks, Dorothy. Okay, well, I think that brings us to, we now get to be in small groups and just, if you're willing, of course, read in the small group the entire piece that you wrote. And, there's probably time for a little bit of, of course, when we listen to someone's writing, it is with the way we listen to someone's focusing. It is non-judgmental. It is to take it in and maybe say back one or two of the words that struck you, or say back an idea that came to you, or even a dominant emotion that you hear. But it's a very gentle listening process. And we were thinking 3 people in a group, if those numbers work out. And everyone should have, a good 6 minutes to read and get a little bit of feedback. And that's what we'll do next, if that's okay. And again, you certainly can pass if you don't want to read, but the invitation is to not talk what you wrote, but to share what you wrote with 2 other people who will be your listeners.
I just want to say, Sondra, if you're feeling reluctant to read, maybe you could focus for a few minutes out loud with people about what the reluctance is and how you feel about the piece, and people can respond to that. So it wouldn't be a choice between being silent or reading your piece. You could also talk about the feeling about reading the piece without reading it.
That's a lovely idea. Thanks, Lynn. And also, I think in this group, I've found that most people am I your second? This is the second August, the second week that you're doing this. But I mean, people get to do this enough in August that it feels pretty comfortable. At least I hope it is. But anyway, we will be put into breakout rooms and get to share a little bit. And then I guess we should just set a time limit. So I think we should come back at 9:30. That gives us ample time. And see you soon. I think you're welcome to turn your videos back on. I think we have just about everybody here. Welcome back again. And we now have about 15 minutes. If people would like to share what they've written, the whole group gets to hear short pieces if you'd like to do that. Or talk a little bit about the group and your experience or what you wrote about. They're sort of open for you now to reflect on this morning. But we always love hearing 1 or 2 pieces if anyone's up for that.
I'd like to read Sondra.
Lovely. That's Marvin.
Can you hear me? I'm Marvin, yes.
Yes.
So it starts with that. What I do not know, I do not know. I know what I know for sure: my name, my situation, my age, where I am currently in front of a screen for helper session. Then there are things that I cannot be sure of. Who is really here on that screen? Not that I do not read your name, but I do not know you. Something like I do not know what you stand for, who you love. Know what gets you to do what you are doing. What's the drive, the will, the search that has brought you to this Monday session of Help for Helpers? What I know is what goes through my mind and my heart when I watch my screen and see your names, Liz, Rachel, Luke, Jim, Katharina, Mary, Susan, Shashi, Isabel, Pauline, Lynn. And what I know, Sondra, when looking at your name, Sondra Perl, it sinks in my mind like a well-arranged and well-organized name. I get some of my memories activated, but at a distance, as if wanting me to know what it feels like to hear your name in my mind, but concerned not to get me carried away from the flow of ideas that this pen is writing. Reading as if flying over my notes back and getting back to what I know, what I am not sure of, gets me to the beginning. I do not know what I do not know. How could I ever dare saying I know? For the little I know and the whole I am not sure of suffice, at least for now. It was
Lovely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. You know, very much using the very moment of writing and being on a screen to be the subject of the writing. It's a very present piece of what one knows and doesn't know and can't know or might want to know. So thank you for that. Someone else? If you've heard one that you think is particularly compelling, you could nominate someone if you felt that was appropriate.
Sashi has a lovely writing.
Yes, I second that. Sashi has a very lovely one. It's
Thank
very
you.
enriching.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Come on, Sashi, we need you.
It's
Sasha, thank you for
it's too long. But Sondra, I wanted to tell you, I also went to CUNY, so when you went, I feel like, oh, I know you.
oh my goodness. Well, I'm glad to know that.
Yeah.
I spent 45 years there. So
Oh my goodness.
Oh, wow. You were a teacher, I was a student. I
Yeah.
still am, so I don't know. I don't know why these people choose me to read this.
Read the whole lot. Read the whole.
Oh my God. What I didn't know that the tongue of my ambition is farther than my hands. All the joy and excitement of imagination of a finished garden turned into a pain. Going out in the heat, searching for a best plant, large hat, dark sunglasses, fell short of protection. I can only last for 2 hours in the nursery. I have to find 30 babies that would fit into my dream garden. Each color, each shape, each texture, each flower have to be different. No single nursery can have all that. Then I ran out of pages because I've been writing notes of this Help for Helpers forever. Sorry. Bringing plants seems easy in comparison to when I had to dig a hole double the size of the plant. My shoulder and hands remembered that they were nearly 80. My legs cramped, pushing the shovel, my feet buckled under. All the plants had to be put only in a certain order, so no one couldn't be done before the other. I could hear the plants laugh and cry. I hired a man who could dig, but he wasn't familiar with the plants or the design or the method to put them in the earth. On top of it, he didn't come on time. He pleaded that he needed to pay the rent, so I gave him all the money he needed for. Now I sit there looking at the orphan plants, scorching in the heat, too heavy for me to move them into the shade. From now on, if I desire something which I cannot do myself, I shall put a lid on it. I should sit on that lid with all my might so that no ambition escapes and turns and ruins my peace and happiness.
Oh,
Thank you again for sharing. And as a fellow gardener, aging, it totally resonates with what I can and can't do. And this heat, I have all this time now and it's so hot, I can barely, going out and on your knees and trying to dig and trying to deadhead or trying to cut. It's a pleasure and a pain. It's really hard. So thank you.
And the ambition and the desire does not die no matter your body works or not. It's
Yeah.
just
Yes.
Yes, thank you. So we have time for one more if someone would like to share.
Could I just ask for an admin to mute me? I've lost control over my buttons when I came back in.
I don't know who's speaking, but
Nicola,
okay. So
if an admin can mute me.
there, it's done. Anyway, comments, thoughts, how this worked for you, the group? Anyone like to share a reflection of today?
I'd like to share a reflection of how the small group worked, because it was a really lovely experience. And, we weren't together for very long, but I felt it was very deep, actually, the way as the person reading, I felt my two group members read with great care and attention, and that helped me to read my own writing in a different way. And listening to what both of my group members read out, those were both very special pieces, and I think I will remember those. So I found the whole session, I didn't have any expectation of today. And it's been much more resonant and powerful than had I had an expectation, I would have expected it to be. So I'd like to say thank you to my group members and also to you, Sondra, and everybody.
Thank you. And I do think there's a culture around focusing, or there's an ethos, there's a way of being that is cultivated very, very carefully from the day you learn about focusing, and that it's really honors the humanity in each of us, and as the vulnerability and also the voice. So in some ways that's not surprising, because those of you who are helpers and you gathered, I think, have a talent and a skill that you have cultivated, and it's really special. So to add the writing piece, it's easy and it's fun. And so thank you. But thank you for saying that, and thank you to everyone for bringing yourselves here.
It also occurs to me that the listening in the small group, or any listening to a writing, is a co-creation, that your attention is bringing something alive to the writing and you're actually participating in its creation.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it isn't only just focusing, right? It's focusing and listening, and that's the genius, one of the many geniuses of what happens when we do this work together. And Dorothy, yeah.
I'm just very happy that you came today. It was perfect timing for me. It reminded me I haven't done much writing lately, more editing of something I'm working on, and nothing quite replaces the power of writing from the deep places within. So I really appreciate that you made the space to do that, and I too honor the small group I had. It was very healing for me. So thank you, Sondra. You have a way of creating this space that's very special each year.
Lynn, any final announcements or?
Well, I think we're full into our writing month, and I'm so happy that you are kind of anchoring Sondra each year. And I'm very happy that we've had this experience and we'll carry on with it next week. So every week in August we'll be writing.
Lovely.
Thank you very, very much, Sandra.
A pleasure. Really good. I wish you all happy, healthy, not too hot summers, or yeah, we won't comment on that. This is a universe that feels safe and lovely and welcoming, and in some ways a counter to what we face largely around us.
And I wish all of you that have gardens that you have an experience that I had, which is that a neighbor loves weeding. Used to weed, and she enjoys weeding. I think that's very, very unusual, and I would wish that for all of you gardeners.
Yeah, may it be so.
I don't know if it's safe to have a neighbor who loves weeding. I would be very careful.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Well, thank you all. Thank you for being here. And thank you for the invitation to Lynn and Katerina and Dorothy. And it's been lovely. So,
Any Monday that you're free, you're always welcome. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.